if you remember correctly, earlier in the month, Electricity Minister Kusile was hopeful about the development at Kusile, saying the restoration of more units at the power station could mitigate the impact of power cuts. And another 800 megawatts, as you heard, has been added to the grid at Kusile's Unit 1. It returned to service a month and a half ahead of schedule. Kusile's Unit 3 was also returned to service at the end of September and has consistently been delivering 800 megawatts. According to ESCOM, the two units are both adding 1,600 megawatts back into the grid, improving the available generation capacity. Joining me now to talk more on this is Bobby Peake, who is the Executive Director at Groundwork and Friends of the Earth South Africa. He's actually going to speak to me not necessarily about the unit coming back online. I know that you're one of the civil society organizations, Mr. Peake, that were against those that reprieve that was given to ESCOM by the Environmental Affairs Department to allow them to actually carry out more emissions of sulfur dioxide. What are you feeling about the fact that 800 megawatts of power have returned, and it does have a little bit to do with that reprieve?
Well, good afternoon and thanks for having me on. Unfortunately, I couldn't listen to Mr. Mardi before when he spoke because I couldn't hear his voice. But essentially, the challenge we face in South Africa with ESCOM's energy crisis is the challenge that Groundwork has been warning of since the beginning of the century, since the 2000s. So this is nothing new and it's not going to end. So we presently got Kusile 1 and 3 online. It is producing energy, but at the same time, it's putting people's health at risk. People are going to die prematurely because of this reality. People are going to get sick because of this reality. And we have costed these impacts on society. And we've come up with a $24 billion impact in terms of health impacts on society. Now, I lived next to an oil refinery as a young child. Was my health meant to be compromised because people needed petrol in this country? I think that's unfair to be able to put people's health at risk because some people need energy. And we've warned ESCOM about this. So the Life After Coal campaign has been working very hard over the last 10 years to ask ESCOM, to push ESCOM and to push our government to move away from coal-fired power. Yeah. And we believe a solution is what we call social ownership of energy. And what I mean by this is that every household in South Africa, rich or poor, needs to have a solar panel on their roofs feeding energy into the grid. And it was ironic that in the beginning of last month, one of ESCOM's adverts came out in support of this. Yeah. They said we need to start putting energy into the grid so we can save the grid. So we must realize that we are in a problem now, and this problem of load shedding is not going to go away because many other coal-fired power stations are going to close because they are old.
All right. So, Mr. Peake, talk to me about the fact that the Department of Environmental Affairs, who gave this emission reprieve to ESCOM until 2025, is saying that there are strict conditions, with this reprieve that comes with it. I think one of them, to mitigate the harm on people's lungs, etc., from the sulfur dioxide, they're saying that ESCOM has to refer people to appropriate health facilities, etc. Is that not enough? Or is that for you showing how big the problem is that they have to force government to ensure that people's respiratory systems are still okay?
I think that's a very interesting way of putting it, is that, at this point in time, government is forced to be able to say, yes, it is a problem. Pollution from the ESCOM coal-fired power stations are impacting upon people. And therefore, we have to have specific processes of dealing with people's health. We believe the minister has missed an opportunity, however, to be more stringent and to be more comprehensive about the proactive measures. And we need to recognize as well that it's not only the Kusile power station. The other power station in this country, Kendal, which is in visual sight of Kusile, is out of compliance. What about the poor people that are living next to Kendal? So every power station in this country presently is operating not according to standards that are acceptable to the present conditions globally on coal-fired power stations. And so we need to have a special process to look at people's health. We believe also that the Kusile power station, by being given this process of bypassing, and what I mean by this is that they're allowed to put all their pollution into the air without cleaning it up. You know, we said from the beginning when this crisis happened, immediately start replacing and repairing the Kusile power station according to specifications. Don't try and take a shortcut. But the problem is we've never been given the figures of what the final permanent repair will be done, and we haven't seen any of that information. So government has type of defaulted this, which is an industrial tactic of bypassing pollution reduction equipment when industry cannot meet standards. And this is not atypical in South Africa. It's happened before.
Yeah. Mr. Peake, my last question to you just very quickly. Clearly, government was in a position where they had to choose between people's health and bringing back the electricity grid to a much better state, which also affects our economy, right? But understanding exactly what you mean, I mean, sulfur dioxide can cause very bad damage to somebody's respiratory system. A person can suddenly have asthma, etc. So I understand where you're coming from. So where are you going to take it from here? I understand that you wanted to appeal. I'm not sure how far that appeal has gone since June, because here we are with Kusile's Unit 1 back on, and it has to do with the reprieve.
So the reality is that we are looking at how to go forward in this case and how to appeal this. And this is important because just remember, there are going to be more than 600 deaths as a result of this, more than 3,000 asthma emergency visits, and more than 720,000 days of lost work.
And those figures, sorry, very quickly, Mr. Peake, where do you get those figures? Is it because you looked at the community?
These figures were the research done to prepare the challenge to Kusile. And so that's really important. It's done by the Center for Research into Energy and Clean Air. But it's also the concerns that we've been raising with the department and the Department of Health over the last 10 years. So these are not new figures in terms of health related to Eskom's coal-fired power stations. They have recognized, we have recognized, and the department has recognized that it is a challenge. The way out, the way for South Africa to deal with the present crisis around coal-fired power stations and the fact that these coal-fired power stations are out of compliance and they are closing and jobs are going to be lost, is to be able to start focusing on an economy that takes Eskom to renewable energy, that ensures that the workforce that is presently at Eskom and the potential many unemployed people around the country are brought into a renewable energy industrial strategy that serves people first, not like green hydrogen, which has presently been pushed in Cape Town, which does not serve society. It does not serve society, and it's basically been developed for a big speculative export market. Green hydrogen does not solve the crisis of energy in South Africa.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Peake, for your time here on eNCA. That was Bobby Peake, who is the Executive Director at Groundwork and Friends of the Earth South Africa.